Welcome back. This is the last debate of the second segment. It pits together Lupane State University and HIT, the Eternal Friends. As with the last time, may you please state your name and, of course, what program you're pursuing.
I am Eugene Brendan Spindi from Lupane State University. I am doing Development Studies Part 2-1.
And your colleague?
I'm Stachisiwe Gwaza at Lupane State University, doing Languages and Communication 2-1.
Harare Institute of Technology Student 1, your name, your program.
Gonidzashe Innocent Maruta, Harare Institute of Technology, Forensic Accounting and Auditing, Part 2-1.
And indeed, your colleague.
I'm Tadiwa Gondo. I'm studying Electronic Commerce and I'm in Part 1.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Your topic is Youth Development in Zimbabwe, a hijacked agenda. That topic yet again, Youth Development in Zimbabwe, a hijacked agenda. We shall have an opening affirmative speech from student 1. That shall be 3 minutes. That starts now.
Once upon a time, Zimbabwe had lofty youth ideologies: free education, free healthcare, and widespread employment. Whatever happened to these ideals? Whatever happened to these lofty ambitions? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am here on this podium today to tell you that the youth development agenda in Zimbabwe has been stolen. I'll highlight 3 specific examples where the youth development agenda has been hijacked, who it's been hijacked by, and what it has been used for. Firstly, the youth development agenda in Zimbabwe has been hijacked by ZANU-PF. I'm sorry to offend, but I would like to highlight an example in 2011 where they proposed, my Shona is bad, but I'm going to say it anyways, Kurera or Ukondla youth development programs, which were never realized. These programs were never realized because they never existed to begin with. They served as a platform for the government to win political votes for the year 2013. And kudos to them, they actually did win those elections. The government made fake promises at the expense of the youth. Thus, we stand here to say that the youth development agenda was hijacked in this instance. Who it was hijacked by? It is the ruling party currently, ZANU-PF. And for what purpose? Well, to win votes. I'll set another example. In 2010, the youth development agenda was misused as a way of embezzling funds. The government pushed Zimbabwean banks to produce funds for the growth of youth development. These funds were funneled by the political elite. The government used its political muscle to pool funds, hence the projects were never realized. The Youth Development Portfolio Committee went around investigating what happened to those funds, and it highlighted plentiful of times that the projects were never realized, and thus the youth development agenda in this case failed because the political elite wanted to funnel funds into their pockets instead of bettering youth development. Lastly, I would like to speak about the international community itself. The international community itself has stolen the youth development agenda from Zimbabwe through the implication of structural adjustment programs. These programs by the IMF pushed the government to spend less on youth or any sort of development. They proposed the reduction of funds in education, in health, and every other services that could have improved Zimbabweans' lives. Thus, the youth development was hijacked by the multilateral institutions of this world, and we have been robbed of the opportunity to grow.
And that is time. I will also tell you another person who hijacked the youth agenda. As I turn 39 next week, and I'm here, so I've hijacked this. I probably think somebody much younger should have been here, but this was so. Well, the opposer's cross-examination by student 2 commences now, and that shall be a minute.
Good day, Ms. Speaker.
Good day.
What is your burden of proof?
Sorry?
What is your burden of proof?
The projects that were never realized.
Truffles, in your speech, you mentioned that there were funds that were embezzled.
Yes, true.
What were those funds supposed to be used for?
They are supposed to be used for youth development.
How then do you account for the fact that the government is giving youths land as well as funds, as well as free education through other processes? How do you account for those funds?
I would say the unemployment rate in Zimbabwe greatly outweighs the few projects that are being proposed.
Mr. Speaker, sir, if electricity goes whilst you're in the process of baking a cake, but then when the electricity comes back, you continue and actually bake the cake, would you not have baked the cake?
I would say that's a bad cake.
Would you not have baked the cake? Yes or no? Yes
I
or
wouldn't
no?
have.
Thank you.
Okay. We shall have a 3-minute opposer's opening speech from student 1. And those 3 minutes start now.
I'm going to start my speech by answering a question that has been proposed by the first speaker of the affirmative delegation as he began his speech. He asked where the ambitions are, where the dreams are, where it is all gone. Now, I want to start by realizing that those ambitions and those dreams were things that were there 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in a different Zimbabwe, a different economy, an economy that was still active. Well, those dreams are still there. Those actions are still there. Those aspirations and desires are still there. But the problem is that it is just a different country. Ladies and gentlemen, as I'm going to be beginning this speech for the non-affirmative delegation, our redefined motion is going to read as follows. The advancement of people aged 18 to 35 has been taken advantage for selfish benefits. And we believe that it has not been taken advantage of. And the main point that I'm going to be presenting to you, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that Zimbabwe is simply a different country from what it was 25 years ago. And just because the dreams and aspirations that were there for youth 25 years ago are not there right now, doesn't mean that the agenda has been hijacked. It is a simple reflection that our economy has deteriorated over that period and our country is not the same as it used to be. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our argument is going to be based on 3 main points: the social, the economic, and the political, which are going to demonstrate to you just how much the youth agendas in Zimbabwe for development of the youth are still very much alive and kicking. Now, in the social aspect, allow me to introduce to you, well, he may not be here right now, but a man named Marvelous Nakamba, who's playing for Aston Villa FC in England right now, the best league in the world. He came from a football academy in Bulawayo, a football academy that has been provided just like the music academy that is in Norton that was started by Oliver Mtukudzi. Now, because there are so many talent schools all over the country, it means that there are active involvement and active participation and active movements for the development of youth in our country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, even in the economic side, we're here as university students, and we realize that as a country, our government has also availed recently university student loans that have been availed to us for the less privileged people who have got the ability. Now, is that development or what? What better development is there than that? Now, ladies and gentlemen, simply because we do not have an economy like the United States, or we do not have an economy like Britain, or because we do not have an economy like China, that doesn't mean that our agenda for youth has been stopped completely. It simply means that it is more difficult for us to raise that agenda than it is for the United States or for Zimbabwe, in fact, like it was 25 years ago, because apparently 25 years ago, every youth in Zimbabwe was employed. Now, lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to look at the political side, where I'm going to outline issues such as the junior parliament, which is active and which has got so many people who are uprising and who are having their political abilities being nurtured there. And I'm also going to outline that we've got aspects in universities such as students, SASI politicians who are rising up and taking their place in Zimbabwean politics. So the development for youth is continuing.
Time. Thank you. Affirmative cross-examination, student 2, 1 minute. Your 1 minute starts now.
So help me understand. What's your understanding of hijacked, or what's your definition of hijacked?
Now, to hijack, as according to my definition, is to take control of something which does not belong to you.
Thank
to
you.
Use it for your own
Then how
advantage.
are you not acknowledging that youth development in Zimbabwe has been hijacked?
I am not acknowledging that it has been hijacked because, as I have proven in the entirety of my speech, there are continuous programs that have been availed by the government of Zimbabwe over the years, despite the deterioration of our economy that have contributed to the development of our youth.
Do you believe that you have been manipulated beyond redemption, or you're just ignorant?
No, I am not. I've not been manipulated by anyone, because I am standing here in my independence, speaking my own opinion, which comes from my own understanding, which goes on to just show that I have been developed as a youth.
Do you understand that your argument is baseless?
No, I do not.
Ignorant indeed.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Opposers rebuttal. Goodness. Yeah, that was pretty long. That was the longest minute so far. We shall have our opposers rebuttal from student 2. That shall be 2 minutes. 2 minutes that start now.
Now, allow me to start by shedding light upon the affirmative delegation. They came here to say that funds were embezzled. But my noble delegation, what funds? From who? They did not give us enough information about the funds that were embezzled. Thus, their point holds no water, because maybe they could have been funds that were for something else that is not youth development. Moving on, the affirmative delegation further went on to mention that we have youths that are not being supported in the world, ladies and gentlemen. But we're actually saying as a delegation that there are so many organizations that are there to support the youth. For example, we have RBZ, which opened up a channel on supporting initiatives of the youth. And we as a delegation are simply trying to say that, yes, they mentioned the fact that once upon a time we had free education in Zimbabwe, blah, blah, blah. But ladies and gentlemen, we are focused on now upon a time. Zimbabwe is a struggling country, ladies and gentlemen. Our economy is not stable enough to support this fact, but they are actually trying to their very last breath to make sure that there is free education. Might I mention student loans to university students? As if that's not enough, I shall also mention facilities that pay for less privileged children, only if you apply, ladies and gentlemen. So just because Mr. Speaker A is not actually getting the benefits of those funds or those free education facilities, it does not mean that they're there. You're lost. Smell the coffee and wake up. This is what's happening now upon a time. Now, that's the only point that was raised by the so-called affirmative delegation. Now, they have failed to actually crash the points that my first speaker was mentioning throughout the whole debate. Thus, they say that our points have no burden whatsoever. But I shall tell them that we still stand strong because they failed to crash our point, whereby my first speaker actually mentioned the fact that the government is curbing to development for the exposure of the youths in the world. For example, the Russian scholarship that was recently given by the government last week, my noble delegation. That's all the points that have been given shall be buried, never to be resurrected. Thank you.
And now we shall have a minute and 30 seconds closing remarks from student 1 of the opposers.
You skipped rebuttals.
Oh, you've got a rebuttal. You want to use it?
Definitely.
Okay. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. So it takes an intelligent individual to distinguish between illusion and reality. So the issue of unsuccessful youth development programs is a recurring theme, and the question is why? So why are we saying that? We're saying that youth development programs have been introduced countless times, but at the end of the day, they cease to exist. Now, the timing of their introduction and the timing when they cease to exist is what matters to us the most. This is why we are saying that it's a hijacked agenda. They cease to exist because they are a hijacked agenda. They are being used as a front for political gains by the government or by the elite. So, these guys here, they fail to understand what being hijacked is. They failed to even give us. So what their argument is based on the fact that there is youth development or there are no funds. Okay, we're talking about hijacking here. Okay, so you failed to give us examples of youth development schemes that are successful in your entire argument. And I'm going to tell you that I am aware of a certain scheme that was unsuccessful. And let me tell you why it was unsuccessful. Because it was used as a front. So the number one scheme that I'm going to tell you about is the housing scheme. So the housing scheme was introduced, right? And it was we are under the impression that it's there for the youth. But at the end of the day, when the polls were over, this housing scheme just disappeared into the thin air. And all we were left with was to wait for another election. And trust me, it will be back again. So the problem is not in the introduction of youth development. The problem is when the youth development disappears and goes out of the window. So the second speaker runs out of things to say and starts stressing out proverbs. Well, that was good, but then pay attention because at least your last speaker needs to say something on this case. So you opted to you opted for insignificant examples of individuals who succeeded on their own. Now the base is who introduced youth development, right? And what youth development skills has been brought forward.
And now, the opposer's closing remarks. Student number 1, 1 minute 30 seconds starts now.
All right, I'll understand why my colleagues from the affirmative delegation are frustrated. I understand why they think that youth development is stagnated in Zimbabwe and as such has been hijacked by the so-called players that they've highlighted before us. Now, but one thing that I would like to bring to the knowledge of my dear debaters is that this debate is not about governance. It is not about politics, and it is not about who is supposed to run the country right or who is supposed to do what is right. Now, this debate is about youth development, full stop. Now, whether some of these things have failed because X is a better leader than Y, or X has tried to do something for the development of their political career has got nothing to do with this debate. This debate has got to do with the youth development agenda, which we have said, even though it exists and even though it is not working as it is supposed to be working, it is only because of the deterioration of our economy over the last few decades of the economy of Zimbabwe. Now, the non-affirmative delegation has brought forward the points which we've brought forward from the social, economic, and political aspects of our country, which have continued to show that there is active youth development, some of which is being driven by private players. And youth development, according to the topic, which they again fail to redefine, is not supposed to be enacted by government alone. Private players can do youth development, which is why we are here as a result of organizations such as SAYWHAT, which is why we've got footballers, which is why we've got musicians that are being developed by the organizations that I've mentioned in my previous speeches. So this is why I believe that youth development in Zimbabwe is not a hijacked agenda. Thank you.
And now, the affirmative closing remarks. Student 1, 1 minute 30 seconds starts now.
For every marvelous Nakamba, there's a Tom, Dick, and Harry that exists out there. A plethora of boys that are sitting in bridges smoking God knows what because they cannot find employment in this godforsaken country. You proposed loans. What good is a loan when you cannot get the employment to pay for it? Aren't you just being burdened unequivocally by your government, which you seem to be supporting so much? You missed one thing. The reason why we address governance before everything else is because governance is the main driving force to youth development in any country. Government is the one that takes care of our youth. Government is the one that looks after our youth. The reason why we deserve to win this debate is because the non-affirmative side failed to address any of the examples that were put forward. They said that our examples did not hold water, or at least we told you that Kurera, Ugondla youth development funds were used for political gains. We told you that the funds that were given by Stanbic and other banks in Zimbabwe were never realized because they never reached the youth. They were funneled instead to political pockets. And we mentioned the structural adjustment programs. We highlighted to you that other players outside the Zimbabwean government have influenced the hijacking of youth development. We never addressed any of those, and thus the end of this debate.
So this is the end of this, the final debate of the second segment. I will remind you again that this debate is proudly hijacked by the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe, by SAYWHAT, and of course the Norwegian Students and Academics International Assistance Fund, and Zimpapers Television Network, and of course me, yours truly. We shall come back to a third segment where the top two shall square off and we shall have that ultimate winner, the ultimate debater. We've seen quite a lot of heat. We've felt the heat wave. And indeed, when we come back, it shall be more and more fire and brimstone in an epic duel, in an epic final. My name is Robin Kondiwa. Join us for that final.